Hi, and welcome to our online webinar today in partnership with Sustainable Energy First. My name is Lucy and I'm Marketing Director at Greater Manchester Chamber. And we're here today with Alex and Ben from our partners, Sustainable Energy First, and our very own Subra, our Director of Business Policy and Research. Given the current climate and geopolitical landscape, it's really important for us to use the expertise of our partner network to bring to our members. So today we're going to be giving you an introduction to Sustainable Energy First, and we're going to be getting a market update. So over to you.
Hello everyone, so I'm Ben Beetham. I look after the partnerships at Sustainable Energy First. We've worked with the Greater Manchester Chamber for a number of years now, assisting members with energy procurement and sustainability. So I thought we'd start the webinar with who we are first and how we can benefit you as members and businesses in Manchester. So I shall share my screen where I've got a few PowerPoint slides for you to establish who we are. So, of course, we are Sustainable Energy First. So just to establish who we are and, the capabilities of the business. We've now been in business a combined 83 years. There's 450 sustainability change makers within the organisation, so there'll always be someone on hand that can assist with anything regarding energy. We now have £8 billion plus of energy management under what we look after, and I think that really shows an impressive figure that 11% of UK commercial energy is managed by us at Sustainable Energy First. I know we said before that there was 80 odd years combined history. That's because Sustainable Energy First was originally started as a company called BIU, British Independent Utilities, in 1997 by two founders. They won their first NHS contract in 2002, which meant that they needed to grow the team. You can see there was a steady growth and a senior management team change in 2017. We rebranded in 2022 due to the way that we were working a lot of our products and customer focus around sustainability. So we felt that was crucial. Something that we're extremely proud of in 2023 was B Corp status, which shows the way that the organisation is forward thinking and the way we want to do things. And then in 2024 we acquired Enenco, which is where we take the combined history, because Enenco have been going since the 1950s, which now makes us up to the formidable force that we are today. So what do we do? Alex is going to be sharing a bit more of an insight to what we do, but essentially anything to do with sustainability and energy procurement. So when your contracts are up for renewal, we have fixed and flexible options. We do have a fully green sustainable option, which Alex will be going into to sort out your contracts. But the most important thing, and the thing that I always say, is there's no cheaper energy than energy that you're not using. So it's more about putting renewable technologies and practices into place to reduce your consumption as much as we can, and then the consumption that's left over, we want to make sure that's as green as possible and as well managed as possible. So that's what we look at doing. As well as that, we do a revenue recovery where we can go over 6 years worth going back of your gas, electricity and water to see if there's any missed charges on your billing that we can claim back. And a lot of our customers are multi-sited, so site infrastructure and making sure new metering is essential. And of course, sustainability, helping you with legislations, reporting, data management. That's everything that we do. Again, just to add to the credibility of what we do, I'm not going to list off all the clients, but I'm sure that you all know some quite big household names within that. It's not only, and I will make this clear, it's not only the big clients that we look after. We do have a really good SME team as well. So anyone within the chamber, whether you've got an appetite for sustainability or you want a solution that can save you time and money and let you get on with your business, please contact us or your account manager at the chamber, and they'll happily put you through to me. But this again, just for us looking after these huge clients and these brands adds real credibility to what we're doing with the Chamber of Commerce. So our work with the chamber so far, and this is only going to be ramping up. We did a huge sustainability event at the Science and Industry Museum in September last year. We're looking at repeating that again, and there will be some events coming up this year with the chamber. I know we're in talks about a roundtable discussion. We've got the webinar that we're doing now, and there's going to be lots of forthcoming content. The event was fantastic. We had a number of customers and chamber members on panel discussions talking about sustainability, and they were able to network with sustainability partners, technology companies in the room to really put their net zero ambitions into focus. And on the right side, we have a podcast that we did with Wayne Jones, Lucy and Clive from the chamber, where we discussed the green intentions and the services that the chamber can offer with sustainability. So if you want to listen to that, again, ask your account manager, they'll be able to point you in the direction. But if you're looking on Spotify, Apple Music, whatever you use, search Sustainably Speaking, and then you'll be able to find the channel with all the podcasts on, and part of that is the Manchester Chamber podcast. So that's enough of me talking about our services for now. What really strikes me and why I love working with Manchester Chamber, I mean, I'm a Northerner myself and I do love Manchester, but the business-wise, it's the ambition and the drive and the innovative businesses around Manchester that I really like, and the fact that you've got a target of net zero by 2038, which is 12 years ahead of the rest of the country. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen now and go to our experts at the chamber to have a discussion with me and Alex. And I'd like to ask you both, Super and Lucy, what drives Manchester with sustainability? You're out there speaking to businesses every day. Why is this ambitious target in place? And, what are you hearing from members?
Sure, I'll start because I can start from that member perspective, and then we can hand over to Subra from that business policy perspective. But one of the key initiatives that the Chamber's involved with is the Be Net Zero Group, which is all of the stakeholders across the whole Greater Manchester region coming together to make that journey to net zero as accessible as it can be. And the brilliant thing about that is the Be Net Zero Group is aligned with the 5-year environment plan. So all of these different plans and strategies that are introduced by the combined authority and the local authorities are all aligned. So it means that we're all stakeholders pulling in the same direction. And I think that's a really key thing, with being a devolved city and by having Andy Burnham as our mayor, he has really put together that integrated plan for the whole region. And to have the combined authority match that devolved region is really important for us, getting all of the stakeholders to pull in the right direction. I think the 2038 target really adds some urgency for our businesses, and I think it really starts to drive up that agenda. And what you find is most businesses are already invested in having that as part of their strategy, but sometimes they don't know where to start. They don't know how much it's going to cost them. They don't have the skills in-house. And I think all of these things can be a barrier. And what it is it's up to the chamber to break down those barriers and make it as easy as possible for businesses to start on that journey. I'm sure Subra will touch on it a little bit more, but we have a local skills improvement plan, and actually green skills cut across all sectors, because it's not just one sector that have to think about this. It's absolutely every single business that has carbon emissions and that hasn't started that journey needs to embed it into their strategy. So for us, absolutely, we can see an appetite from members to get involved, but it's down to us to make sure that we help to facilitate that, because it's not easy, and we know that business leaders, especially in the current climate, have so many competing priorities that, you know, we need to make it as easy as possible for them to navigate. Subra, from a LSIP perspective, Local Skills Improvement Plan, and from a business policy perspective, do you have anything to add?
Yes, thank you, Lucy. I'll begin from the 2038 target, if I may. So the target for the whole of the UK is 2050, but in Greater Manchester, we have a much earlier target of 2038. The logic behind having that much earlier target is that actually, you know, it's the seriousness of the situation. It's the recognition that actually we need to tackle this head on and tackle this as soon as possible so that we are actually avoiding some of the negative outcomes that might emerge if we don't tackle it. That's one thing. But the second thing, of course, is that we can use the whole journey of net zero transition as an opportunity. You know, there is the opportunity for cost savings, which, you know, you have sort of alluded to, Ben, earlier, and of course we'll talk about that. There is the opportunity, as we have now realized over the last 3-4 years, to actually become a bit more secure so far as our energy supplies are concerned. There is the opportunity for innovation in that green space. Again, that's not something which is restricted to any particular sector of business. That's something that's available to all sectors of businesses. So there is all of that opportunity that net zero transition presents, right? And so the 2038 target was actually a mechanism for us to grab the opportunity, but also then make sure that we are avoiding some of those negative outcomes. So that's the broad context for that 2038. In terms of emissions within Manchester, Greater Manchester as a whole, and the areas that need to be targeted, transportation is a big contributor to carbon emissions, but the second is probably around housing and commercial stock, you know, so office space and that type of thing. On transportation, Lucy mentioned the strategies and the plans that we have in GM, and the B network with the modernization of the bus fleet, for example. We have moved over to electric hybrid buses. So again, we are trying to reduce the emissions here from the transport network. And if we were to actually make some of those changes in terms of behavior, for more people to start using public transport, that's obviously going to be of benefit. If more businesses start using, you know, sustainable sources of energy, that's going to have a massive benefit. So those are the types of things that we need to start looking at now, and this is where, you know, some of the things that you were talking about actually fits in very neatly with business priorities as well. You know, when we speak to businesses, I'll come to skills in a moment, but in terms of general net zero, you know, the one thing that often comes up is that businesses don't know where to start, right? And that's actually one of the first barriers that we need to break down. If, you know, most people that we speak to are actually committed to that net zero transition, are actually committed to reducing their carbon emissions, but they might say, well, I'm a restaurant, and you know, I have only 4 members of staff, and this is what I do. I don't know how net zero applies to me. I don't know how I might decarbonize my business. But you also have, you know, IT businesses, law firms, you know, the service type businesses also say similar things. So that awareness piece in terms of helping businesses understand that actually net zero is not all about them being able to put up a windmill or, you know, actually making radical changes, but instead it is about small steps. It might be, you know, looking at their own estate. If they have multiple sites, it might be looking at their own fleet and understanding the opportunities for net zero. So that's the first barrier that we need to break down. And that kind of brings me to the second point, which is around skills. So generally, we have found that there is a shortage of green skills that came up in the first iteration of the Local Skills Improvement Plan. And many businesses were talking about green skills. But again, they didn't know how that applied to particular sectors. So whether it is construction, what does it mean in the context of construction? What does it mean in the context of manufacturing? But the one thing that I would say is common for any business in any sector is that very first piece. It's what are the 2 or 3 steps that a business owner, be it a small business or a large business, can take to actually reduce their carbon emissions a little bit. And in that process, perhaps make themselves a bit more resilient against energy shocks, price shocks, make them a bit more resilient in terms of actually being able to modernize their processes, but also then look at the cost savings and what benefits that process might have for their business, right? And so it is very important, I think, for businesses to actually work with trusted partners, because when they actually say that they don't know where to start, and because you probably have a fragmented market in this area, actually being able to work with somebody who is trusted, who the chamber can recommend, I think is going to be quite important for everyone.
Thanks for that. And on that, we've been asked a number of questions from members and also members of staff from the chamber in Lucy's team about current market conditions. So I think we've got something that's a solution for current prices and also would help towards businesses' ambitions for net zero and climate change by that 38 target. But most importantly, what we've been asked is why is the market doing what it's doing at the minute with the Iran conflict? So I have enlisted one of our experts, Alex Wilson, who I'll pass you over to now, who's going to give a market update for all the members.
Everyone see those okay? Brilliant. So energy is obviously in the forefront of the news at the minute, and I've put up this horrible graph on the screen that you can see now, and it does go back to 2018, but I'm not going to give you a short history update of the energy market. I kind of just wanted to demonstrate the severity of how volatile the market's been over the past few years. And within the space of 6 years, we've experienced extreme volatility. Volatility within the energy world, I'd say outside of energy, when you say volatile, you think of maybe something erupting or quite a specific personality type. But volatility within the energy world can mean movement up or down, and normally quite large movements. So it's not always a bad thing. So in 2020, we experienced a volatile market, but it was low prices. COVID shut a lot of businesses down in terms of working in person. Unfortunately, quite a lot of businesses went into administration, things like that. And suppliers had quite an excess of energy that they had overpurchased or was basically undersupplied that needed to get rid of. And that resulted in the market falling significantly. And businesses at that time could have contracted on an extremely good commodity rate. Fast forward sort of 12 months, the market rose to its highest at that time. Prior to this, the highest price that we'd seen in the energy market was about £86 a megawatt hour, or 8.6 pence per kilowatt hour. And that was the beast from the east, if everyone remembers that weather event we had. And those prices were absolutely blown out of the water by the Russia-Ukraine conflict, which you can see here, which kick-started in February of 2021. You see prices rise significantly through that period. The Russia-Ukraine conflict was a bit of a misnomer for the energy market, because at the time, Russia provided circa sort of 90% of Europe's gas. And Europe at the time didn't know where it was going to get the rest of its gas from, whether they were going to be able to keep the heating on, allow people to cook things, all that sort of stuff. So there's a very big panic to essentially find another source of gas. A lot of countries managed to move their supply to Norway, rely more on the liquefied natural gas market that we'll talk a bit more about later. But that conflict kind of subsided. It's still ongoing. There's still issues with Russia-Ukraine. But as you can see from that sharp drop, the market did come down and fell to around about £60 a megawatt hour in sort of Feb 2024, which were the lowest prices we'd seen for about 3 years. Now, if we continue, we've had significant volatility throughout the last 2 years. If we zoomed in on that section of the market, and looked at it, it would be very up and down. But on this graph here, it's kind of dwarfed by all that volatility we saw in 2022. The media at the minute would probably have you believe that this is a similar event to the Russia-Ukraine crisis. I want to kind of set people's minds at ease. This isn't the same. We're not going to be in the position where we'll see prices go up to, they were circa £800 a megawatt hour or 80 pence per kilowatt hour, which was like nothing we've ever seen before. The current conflict in the Middle East is quite localized. There's still affects a number of countries and demographics around the world, but it's not as significant as the crisis we saw in 2022. The Middle East provides what we call a lot of liquefied natural gas. It's about 20% of global supply is transported through the Strait of Hormuz. And the Strait of Hormuz is a contentious pass that a lot of shipping containers travel through. So it's not really just the energy market that's been impacted here. Lots of global goods pass through the Strait of Hormuz. But what we've seen out there is that there's been significant amount of infrastructure that's related to energy being hit. So we've had oil refineries that have been struck by missiles. We've had liquefied natural gas facilities struck by missiles. We've had shipping tankers and containers that have gone through the Strait of Hormuz that have been attacked. And essentially, this has caused energy prices to rise because those routes are no longer viable. And shipping containers have to go the long way around, basically. So this adds prices because ultimately you've got to pay more for fuel. A lot of organizations actually don't want to transport goods through the Strait of Hormuz anymore. So finding a captain that can on that ship to go through the Strait of Hormuz has been a challenge. But also the infrastructure attacks have ultimately reduced the amount of supply that can be produced within the market in the Middle East. And that's meant that countries are now competing at a much higher scale for this type of liquefied natural gas product. So America at the minute, they are the world's largest exporter of liquefied natural gas, providing about 40% to the global market. And now that ultimately the supply in the Middle East has dried up or sort of reduced, a lot more organizations that typically wouldn't buy from America are now having to buy that gas. So we'll cover off the liquefied natural gas market in a minute, but essentially it's a highly volatile market. There's increased in price, and now there's not as much supply in the market, and also there's more countries that are bidding for that type of product. Within the last couple of weeks, we've heard of peace deals that are going to be announced. I think this is probably the third rendition of a peace deal that's been announced over Iran and America that are sort of in the conflict at the minute. We have seen the market react sharply to those rumours of a peace deal. However, when the peace deal turns out to not be true, and we've also seen the market react quite negatively and turn back up. So at the minute, we're kind of in a bit of limbo. Prices have been steadily rising. And as we get closer to October, which is typically the biggest buying round for UK businesses in the UK, there are a number of other factors that we need to consider. So whilst Iran-America conflict is sort of the main headline in the news, one thing that businesses need to be aware of is that we've got a bit of a safety net in the UK and Europe, and this is called gas storage. Basically, think of them as huge, massive vats where gas can be stored. And the reason for it is that when we go into winter time, we want to enter winter with a safety net. So if there are any cold snaps, we can release this gas from storage into the gas networks and hopefully not be impacted by any cold weather. On the screen, you can see a bit of a heat map, and this heat map sort of dictates the percentages of gas storage levels that are full in the nations that you can see on the screen. The UK at the minute is about 19%, but the markets across Europe are very interlinked. So there is pipelines that go from each country, subsea pipelines as well that can transport gas and also electricity. At the minute, as a continent as a whole, we are in quite a bad position from the level of gas storage. We're at a 5-year low of where we should be right now. And whilst all this conflict in the Middle East is going on, I'd probably shift a bit of focus to this gas storage, because we're going to need to fill this up at some point. We're currently mandated, well, Europe is mandated to have these storage facilities 75% full by the 1st of November. So what we're expecting over this summer period is quite a large buying round of gas across Europe. And supply and demand factors, the way they work is if there's less supply in the market and more of a demand for something, prices will go up. So this is just something that businesses should keep an eye on. If the Iran conflict carries on and then we get into this buying round of gas, then we could start to see a premium on prices for gas and electricity. In the UK, we're still heavily driven by gas prices because about 50% of our electricity is generated by gas. So typically when gas rises, so does the price of electricity as well. The other thing to take note of is that the UK gets a majority of its gas from Norway. So Norway are our biggest single provider of gas. It's about 35% of our gas comes from Norway. And at the minute, what you can see on the screen is it's quite a boring graph. It is a schedule of maintenance of the Norwegian gas facilities. And basically, at certain points in the year, they reduce production so that they can do repairs and maintenance on their facilities. All this information at the minute is actually factored into the market price. But what isn't factored into the market is the unknown. So again, I've talked about this October buying round when typically a lot of businesses will go to market. You can see here that from August to October, there's quite a reduced amount of gas that's going to come from Norway. So if you're a business that's looking to go to market for the next contract, if you have typically a short window in which you do this, sort of 3 to 6 months before, the main things to be aware of is that if the Iran conflict continues, and that if you're doing it at a time where there's reduced gas coming from Norway, and also if we haven't managed to pull our finger out and fill up those gas storage facilities, you probably will be looking at a premium in terms of your next contract. I mentioned briefly about the liquefied natural gas market. This is what we call the marginal fuel source in the UK. And by that, I mean, it's the little bit we need to top up our percentages to 100% of demand. And the way that this market works is there's lots of tankers that go around the world and countries bid on them to be delivered to their shores. And going back to those points that I mentioned before, this market, similar to the current gas market and electricity market in the UK, has seen significant volatility down to those factors I discussed around the Strait of Hormuz and the competitive factors of other organisations now bidding for this gas. It is a bit of a crazy world in terms of this market. You could see a ship delivering gas to the UK and it'll float around the shore and a high bid will come in and it might travel another 4,500 miles to another country because they put a higher bid in. So it can be as ruthless as that they turn around just before they're about to dock. But we have got a number of liquefied natural gas deliveries arriving on UK shores soon. But as the marginal source of fuel, this market has risen sharply. So again, this is something that's impacting gas prices slightly at the minute. I've talked quite a bit about commodity costs there. So that is only part of your bill as a commercial business. The other part of your bill, unfortunately, at the minute has been going up as well. And we call this non-commodity costs. So these are policy costs, subsidies that you pay government, distribution, transportation costs. And if we go back to 2012, I was just finishing university, wasn't even thinking about this stuff. But at the time, non-commodity costs typically made up about 40% of a commercial business's energy bill. If we fast forward to 2026, around about 65% of a commercial business's bill is now non-commodity. About 35% weighs on commodity cost. At SE First, it's our view that these costs are going to continue to rise as we get closer to net zero, 2050 date for the majority of the UK, 2038 for Manchester. These costs are going to continue to rise. A lot of the costs are associated with renewable subsidies. That's basically where the government will pay a proportion of the cost or all of the cost to bring a new technology online. And rather than footing the bill, UK commercial businesses pay a subsidy or levy in their supply contract. Unfortunately, there's sort of a bit more bad news on the horizon in terms of those costs, but it's kind of a catch-22. Obviously, a lot of businesses out there will be working towards a net zero target and will want new technologies to come online to help with that target and help them achieve their goals. But unfortunately, someone has to foot the bill. So we had two new charges that were announced last year that you'll see on your breakdown of your bill. One is nuclear regulated asset base, which is to support the Sizewell C project. And the other one is called the Network Charging Compensation Scheme. And this is a government scheme to support energy intensive businesses. It's about 300 very specific manufacturing sectors. So if you're out there thinking, maybe I am one of them, reach out, we can help you work that out. But there's two more charges that are coming down the line. One of them is carbon capture subsidy, and the other one is hydrogen levy. And these are supposed to come online by the end of the 2020s. So these are two new technologies that are coming to the market that the government have decided to subsidise, that commercial businesses will end up paying a proportion of those costs. A lot of businesses are kind of subsided to the fact that nothing can be done about these non-commodity costs. Well, I'm here to say that there are. There's things we can do about commodity and non-commodity costs. And it kind of nicely segues into a product that I wanted to talk to you about, which is called the Sustainable Energy Consortium. Now, this is a procurement product, so it's there as an option for your supply. There's no specific timing for this. It's open for anyone to join. We do have a bit of a minimum threshold on it, but pretty much any business can access this. It's a renewable backed product. And to sort of break it down into sort of layman terms, on the left-hand side, we have a pool of independent generators. And what I mean by that is owners of wind turbines, solar farms, hydro projects. We basically contract with those. We've got quite a large pool at the minute. It's consisting of over 100 independent generators around the UK, very geographically spread from, I think we've got some assets in one of the islands off the top of the UK, all the way down to sort of Cornwall. So it's a very, very big spread. There's a supplier in the middle that basically does all the billing, a licensed energy supplier to deliver that. And then out the other side is a pool of deep green energy that's available for customers to purchase. One of the main benefits of this product is it takes you away from the wholesale market. So all that volatility that I just discussed previously, this type of product, you are buying your energy directly from those generators in the UK. So the energy within this consortium at the minute, I'll discuss a little bit later, but it's very competitively priced against the market. And that's because we've bought these contracts years ago, very long term. So the price is secure and stable and isn't impacted by any of that volatility. I mentioned the 100 assets that we're currently working with around the UK. Here is a selection of some of them. You can see there's quite a large spread of technology type, geographic location. And the reason for that is because, you know, it might not be sunny up north. It's not sunny up north very often. But the wind might not be blowing up north, but it will be blowing down south, etc., etc. So through this product, what we want to do is essentially provide as much renewable energy as we can at any one time. A lot of the projects aren't just green energy projects. They're also, they have biodiversity schemes attached to them. a number of green skills projects, pollination corridors, some really good stuff that will essentially enhance your sustainability credentials or, look brilliant in an ESG report. One of the really truly innovative things that we're doing at the minute is something called half-hourly matching. And this is hopefully where I don't lose a lot of people, but essentially energy users in the UK will have a half-hourly meter typically, and every half hour that meter will ping and it will tell them how much energy they have used. The inverse is true for generators. So they have a half-hourly meter attached to a wind turbine solar farm. Every half hour that pings and tells them how much energy they have generated. And what we're doing with this product is we're overlapping the two. So we have a pool of generators and a pool of users who will have a combined half-hourly profile that will look something like that. And the generators might be a bit more volatile in terms of their production. But the idea is to overlap the two so that we can make some really bold sustainability claims. So we can start saying, last year, business X, not only was all of their energy from a renewable source within the UK, and we've got the certificates for it, but we can actually say that 83% of the time last year, we can demonstrate that they were using renewable energy through something called half-hourly matching. Yes, this is great from a sustainability perspective to have this visibility on your data. But through this matching product, what we're also able to do is avoid some of those non-commodity costs. So if we can demonstrate to Ofgem and to Elexon, who are two parties within the energy world, that you are using renewable energy, the argument is that if we can demonstrate it, why should you have to pay for some of those subsidies to do with those generation types? So if we hit a high level of matching, so at the minute, our average matching percentage at SC First is 90%. If we hit 90%, users can get about a 1.8 pence reduction on their bill through this product per kilowatt hour. So if you're using about a gigawatt hour of energy, it's an £18,000 reduction through this product, and that just scales up exponentially. The more energy you use, the bigger reductions we can get around this cost. I mentioned before that the Sustainable Energy Consortium sits outside of market volatility, and the way that we derive a commodity price is through something called a weighted average price. So when we started this product back in 2023, the energy market was in a different place. It was a lot higher than it is now, and we bought our first slug of wind at £150. But as the market's been cascading and falling through that period, we've managed to secure more contracts at lower prices, which has ultimately brought the weighted average price down. And the current price for customers to enter this consortium is £79 a megawatt hour, or 7.9 pence, which is currently significantly lower than the front year price for energy at the minute. And couple that with the reductions you get through the non-commodity relief, it provides a very attractive route to market, be that around risk, cost, and then also your sustainability credentials as well. So we're seeing quite a lot of customers at the minute access this route, and many of them are doing it for different reasons. Obviously, those that have got quite a short-term contract end date are thinking around the cost basis. We've got some customers that, totally aren't bothered about the cost, in terms of maybe bigger customers that really want to strengthen those green credentials and demonstrate where they are getting their energy from in the UK and how much is being matched on a half-hourly basis. And then we've got a lot of customers who are taking this from a risk point of view. So rather than just relying on the wholesale market, contracting maybe 12, 24 months, they're doing this as a long-term hedge. So securing their energy for sort of typically 5 years under this program, so that they know what they're going to pay, they know that it's a competitive rate, and they can actually remove themselves from the unknown and remove themselves from those sort of geopolitically impacted market volatility prices. So that's it from myself. Kind of maybe wanted to just throw it back to the rest of you guys and just see if there's any questions or anything further you'd like to discuss on that.
I'd like to reiterate before the questions get going that we really want Manchester businesses, well, all businesses, but as this is aimed at Manchester, that we want businesses to be proactive to these scenarios, not reactive. So we've had a number of crises so far, as Alex has gone into, but future-proof you, and fit in with the ambitious target of Manchester businesses as well. So it really is a great product to fit all of that. So I don't, it doesn't matter the size of the business or the sustainability drivers behind it. Any sort of questions on or uncertainty with the energy market, then please contact us or get hold of your account manager. But I just wanted to reiterate the proactive rather than reactive that we'd like to see from Manchester. So yeah, if you've got some questions for Alex on behalf of your members, I'm sure there will be lots of questions. I'd also like to say as well, the market update that Alex gave, we are recording this on the 18th of May. So the market update's timestamped for that. But again, if you want a more up-to-date market report, I'm sure Alex will happily take a call with you to go over at a later date. But yeah, I'll be quiet and let you guys ask us some questions.
Thank you. Thanks, Alex. That was really useful. I think we just have, there's one overriding question for me on behalf of our members. There's quite a lot of members that have significant usage that will have people dedicated to this in-house. If a business doesn't have that dedicated resource and knowledge in-house, what's the best way for them to kind of access this kind of information from the experts, which is you at Sustainable Energy First? And is there a team that they can speak to?
Yeah, sure. So it really, it really doesn't matter on scale or size. We've got some absolutely huge users that are accessing this product, but we've also got some customers that are spending, maybe £100,000 with this product. And for those that don't spend that, we have other very similar products where you can access this type of arrangement. So again, it doesn't matter on scale. It doesn't matter on your experience. We've got a product that will fit most, and that those smaller users, we don't want to neglect those. They can access the same benefits. In terms of resource within a business, that's why we're here. We service some really big customers who need a little bit of our help. We service those customers that don't have the experience, and that's probably where we have the most involvement. So if you don't have a dedicated energy manager, or you don't have someone that really wants to look at this or finds it a real pain, then absolutely come and talk to us. We've got the time. We've got a number of different areas in which we can direct customers to, be it if you're what we class as a corporate customer or a mid-market customer or an SME customer. And we've got an avenue, an expert that can speak to you and sort of guide you through the process.
Brilliant, thank you. I know that was my understanding, and I think that just goes to show why we chose to have you guys as our partners, because there is something for everyone. And as you know, the Chamber does represent a really clear cross-demographic of size, sector, and it's great to hear that there's support available for kind of every type of member. So thank you for that.
We have actually got a really new product that we're going to be bringing to market, and we will be looking at sharing that with the Chamber as soon as it is. But whereas Alex is talking about the consortium, the Sustainable Energy Consortium, we're also going to have an SME green product that works on the half-hourly matching that Alex said. So just to reiterate, there really is a green sustainable product that fits all members.
Brilliant, thank you.
Supra, did you have any questions for us?
I don't have a question as such, but it's more of an observation, I think. What struck me as you were speaking, Alex, is something that resonated with kind of the initial comments that we were making, that actually this space need not be that complicated. And actually, that there are some easily accessible solutions for the majority of businesses out there. And the second thing is having that kind of dedicated person that they can speak to, whether a business reaches you through the Chamber or directly. there is that hand-holding and initial support for many of them, which sort of breaks down one of the barriers for businesses, which is what I was talking about earlier. Well, I don't know where to start, but that doesn't matter. Actually, if you speak to the experts at SC First, then they will actually provide you with that trusted advice to an external non-partisan, and actually help you along in that process. So that was one thing that struck me. And the second thing that struck me was that, when you had that declining costs, almost like a hillock going down, is that actually, if you think about social value, and that it's built on 3 pillars, of which there is localization, there are environmental credentials, etc., which are part of that. Again, it is possible to both demonstrate sustainability credentials for a business by using that product, but also then save costs because you're hedging for a fairly long period of time, right? Up to 5 years. That's actually quite interesting, and I think it might be something which many businesses might be interested in, because the green space has had push and pull factors, with kind of regulation coming in, strategies and plans which are actually putting in some of these mechanisms in place, but then also stimulating that pull demand from businesses. Because the younger generation of staff might be demanding that businesses and their employers actually become more sustainable, but also because the businesses have to demonstrate their sustainability credentials to get into the public procurement system or to get into the procurement system of other large businesses. And so the fact that there are options available for them on the social value front to demonstrate their commitment is also quite interesting. And I think those are 2 things that I was struck by. Just observations rather than questions there then.
Yeah, I think they're really good observations. I think, Ryan, to your first point, this is a very complex product for us internally and has taken a significant amount of time to get off the ground and get running. But from a customer perspective, it's very, very simple. And I would consider this as low-hanging fruit in terms of the commitment to do it and also the results that it achieves, because immediately by going down this sort of route, your electricity supply is immediately carbon neutral. And around at the minute, there's quite a substantial amount of criticism around green-backed products, but not this one. So there's a consultation at the minute from SBTi and some changes coming in on the greenhouse gas protocol. But with this product, we're kind of already getting ahead of what those changes are going to be, and we're kind of future-proofing this product. So, if anyone comes at you with any claims of greenwashing, this product here already absolutely wipes those criticisms out of the water. Around your second point, I think there's always a misconception that sustainability means expensive. So with this product, what we've demonstrated is that not only can you reduce your reliance on the wholesale market, but you can also save cost and carbon at the same time. So those 2 factors around a weighted average price that has got lower over the past 3 years and that is currently below the current market levels, and also through the non-commodity costs that you get relief on through this type of product, it can deliver financial savings, and businesses can also become more sustainable, which is typically not the case for a lot of other types of activities within that sustainability space.
Brilliant. Okay, well, I think that brings a good end to the webinar. As I've said, me and Lucy are working hard in partnership to create content for members, to make services like ours as easy to access as we can. We're negotiating, sorting out a roundtable event for people to get involved under the Sustainably Speaking brand. If ever you need any help, the team, Alex, will be happy to jump on a call and discuss further. We've got exciting things like an SME workshop where we're going to have, every month one of our members of the SME team with Lucy and the team at the Manchester office. So if you need any help negating your bills or any concerns with price rises, there'll be someone in the heart of Manchester to take up as one of your chamber services. So there'll be lots from us. I don't know if there's anything you want to add, Lucy, to end.
No, just that there's a reason that we chose Sustainable Energy First as our partners on this. You're the experts. We've worked with some of the team members for 10 plus years. And, it's our job as a chamber to help you navigate changing landscapes, areas where you're not the experts. It's our job to provide the experts. So just if you want any information at all on how to speak to the Sustainable Energy team, how to take up any of the services, just contact the chamber, your account manager, and we'll be happy to connect you.
Brilliant. Okay, thanks everyone for your time.
Thank you, everyone.
Hey, everyone.
Bye.